Okay. Going to the Italian restaurant, part 2. The next day, I asked Fran to report to Ferdinand while I spent my time leisurely in the temple. It was my usual routine, but my day was far from ordinary. I called Ella over after breakfast to give her the specially made hairpin, saying it was a gift to celebrate her marriage, and she was so moved that she actually cried. Then, when I was practicing the Hartspiel with Rosina, Feline was watching me with such overwhelming awe that it was almost distracting. I started working on my dedication whirl shortly after, during which Hartmut asked why no blessings were being granted. Because she's not trying to, you idiot! Why would she try and grant blessings? Who would she bless? After third bell, I made my way to the high priest's room with my guard nuts and apprentice scholars. Sorry. Ferdinand delegated work to all of my retainers except Angelica, who was guarding the door with her life, as per usual, and then called me over. Rosamund, I received a report from Fran. Is it true that you plan to return to the castle to finish your clothing? It is a summer outfit, after all. If we do not hurry, the season will have come and gone. Not to mention, I must discuss the dyeing competition with my mothers. I suppose. Very well, then. I was also told that you were going to be visiting the Italian restaurant to speak with the lower city merchants. Know that I have decided to accompany you, both to forestall the danger inherent in leaving you without supervision, and to observe the condition of the lower city since the Entwicklung. I'm gonna end up saying that weird. I don't know why. It's just the way I guess it's written. So you say, but you're actually hoping to try the new menu, are you not? Uh-huh. More than likely, as part of the reason. The only recipes of mine that Ferdinand knew were the ones he had purchased through Todd. There was no doubt in my mind that he was interested in more than just the state of the lower city. He responded only with a casually raised eyebrow, but his silence was more than enough to confirm my suspicions. You got called out. My attendance is already set in stone, Ferdinand eventually said, but say nothing of this to Sylvester. If even a word of our plans reaches his ears, he will tag along for certain, and that is a mess we do not want to endure. Something tells me the merchants will be quite motivated if the Archduke himself arrives to speak to them. The trip is scheduled for before the spring coming of age ceremony, correct? At the moment, some strange fervor has possessed Sylvester to actually begin going through his immense backlog of work. It is best not to disturb him now. Yes, don't break that chain. Don't break that concentration. Ferdinand was evidently set on blocking Sylvester from joining us. I agreed with his assessment for the most part, since having the Archduke with us would only make things more complicated than they needed to be. Furthermore, regarding the interior of the orphanage director's chambers, Ferdinand continued, presumably having been informed of my retainer's criticism of my cheap furniture through the Fran. I was afraid he was going to push me to waste money, but my expectations were soon compounded in the best way possible. The orphanage director's chambers may remain as they are. Meetings with scholars from the castle will be held in the noble section of the temple, in rooms that are closer to the front gate. I have no intention of bringing nobles to the orphanage, nor do I know how they will respond to the Blue Priests. I intend to allow the scholars to go only where I can see them. If that means I don't need to buy new furniture, then I agree entirely. Indeed, I also intend to reuse the previous High Bishop's furniture for the more formal meeting room. Waste not, want not, as they say. I nodded eagerly as I voiced my agreement, which earned me an exasperated look from Ferdinand. However, the orphanage director's chambers are a unique case. Remember well that you will need furniture appropriate to your status as the Archduke's adopted daughter in every other situation. I continued to nod as Ferdinand explained that this will most likely be relevant when it was time for me to get married. That was still a long time from now, so I immediately stopped thinking about it. Ferdinand, if you would allow me to change the subject, what would make a suitable reward for my retainers? I gave clothes and diptychs to my temple attendants, and those who work especially hard in the orphanage get dessert, but I do not know what to give nobles. For the girls, I could presumably get by with custom-made hairpins and new rinsham, not to mention the new dyed cloth, but for the guys? Absolutely nothing came to mind. If they are working according to their pay grade, then nothing at all, Ferdinand said. Rewards are not necessary unless they have accomplished something quite remarkable indeed. As it turned out, being a retainer of the archducal family was considered enough of a reward in itself. The best thing I could do for them was to be a lady deserving of their service. I believe that will create a significant gap between them and my temple attendants, I said. If we were to assume they did accomplish some remarkable deed, what would make a suitable reward for them? Something with a crest engraved on it. But such things are not to be given out lightly, so I would sincerely recommend that you discuss the matter with others before taking any action. We continued working with Ferdinand until 4th bell, and after eating lunch, I wrote a letter to Frida of the Offmer Company. I explained that I had been permitted to meet with them in the Italian restaurant, but that my guardian, Ferdinand, was going to be accompanying me. I also noted that we would be bringing 2 guards and 1 attendant each before asking for details on who the other expected guests were. As for the date, I asked them to select something that was at least 5 days from now, but 3 days before the spring coming-of-age ceremony. This would give me enough breathing room in case I fell sick during my commute between the castle and the temple. Gil, deliver this to the Offmer Company. I handed over the letter before returning to the castle with my retainers. Upon my arrival, when I told Riarda that we were working with the Gilberta Company to produce a new outfit, she rejoiced to high heaven. My, this must be the first time you've ever shown interest in one of your new outfits, milady, she exclaimed, clearly excited that I was paying some mind to fashion. She was pretty much used to my leaving everything to my attendants and responding to her clothing-related questions with blatant disinterest. Let us involve ladies Florencia and Elvira as well. I had turned 10 during my long sleep, which meant I needed to adjust the length of my skirts, even though I hadn't grown at all. As it stood, I didn't have any appropriate clothes. We ended up summoning Florencia's and Elvira's personal seamstresses, as well as the Gilberta Company, in order to complete the preparations for all my summer clothes at once. 2 days after summoning the seamstresses, the ordering began. It seemed that I would be picking my outfits for Florencia, Elvira, and Charlotte. Sticking my grubby little hands into the dyeing industry when nobody was looking had apparently taught them to keep a close eye on me to prevent any other trends from spreading into thin air. I need to, quote-unquote, be more thorough with my report to those they concerned. Sorry, I just sprang into action right after thinking it up. I didn't mean anything bad by it. On the day of, Karina arrived with her seamstresses in tow. Tuli wasn't with them, it seemed, that while she was doing her best to learn etiquette, she wasn't quite ready to visit the castle yet. It was a shame, but I pointed out to the design that she had made for me, in which Karina had spread out on the table, and sought permission from Florencia and the others to use it. I rationalized my choice by saying how well received my bubble skirt had proven during this winter, which prompted Florencia, Elvira, and Charlotte to peer over the design document together and start listing out minor adjustments. I believe this part could use a bit more decoration, Florencia suggested. It feels somewhat empty as is. Furthermore, the flower ornament on the chest here will do, but perhaps the flower ornament on the skirt should be made larger. What color is best, Elvira asked. There are summer clothes, so some shade of blue is the obvious choice. I would recommend a light blue to better suit her hair color, Charlotte replied. Furthermore, let us use even more white lace. Doing this will make the outfit appear cooler and refreshing. The dress was altered to incorporate more lace and cloth as was appropriate for nobles, but its core design had passed inspection. It came as a massive relief, especially when I had worried that it might be rejected wholesale. Once we had finished ordering the light blue outfit, our attendants began selecting the other designs. Brynhilde was working especially hard, teaming up with Riarda to carefully analyze each design before accepting or rejecting it. Lazetta, however, was just walking around serving tea. I see you do not have much to say about the designs, Lazetta. Are you uninterested in fashion? I asked. I'm going to be taking care of your winter dresses. My intention is to have them visually harmonize with Schwartz and Weiss's outfit. It is a job I will not give to any other, Lazetta said with a smile full of anticipation. Wearing the same clothes as the Shoemills wasn't an option, but she was burning with ambition to at least make them feel similar. Well, she seems to be having fun, so okay. Speaking of which, we have scheduled the dyeing competition for the start of autumn, but where are we going to hold it, I asked, looking at Florencia and Elvira as I sipped my tea. Had I been the only one evaluating the submitted cloth, we could have just summoned the craftspeople to the temple, but Florencia and Elvira had elected to participate as well. Hosting the competition in the castle was the safest option, but actually getting craftspeople inside would prove difficult. Given how many nobles are invited, it must be the castle, Florencia said. We intend to bring craftspeople into the castle, I asked, blinking in surprise. Elvira looked at me with wide eyes as though she never expected to hear such a thing. Of course not. What are you saying? We would never allow craftspeople into the castle. Commoners are hard on the eyes. We do not need them walking around while we are attempting to judge which cloth will be the most popular. Well, I suppose that makes sense. Not even Tuli is allowed to visit the castle yet. Completely untrained craftspeople would never survive. I had thought that it might be an opportunity for me to see Mom, but reality was not so kind. After brainstorming for a while longer, we decided to have the dyeing workshops entrust the Gilberta Company with their cloth, which we would then display in the castle. Each piece would have a metal plate beneath it displaying the name of the workshop that had dyed it, and we would make voted on our preferred cloth over a tea party before selecting our preferred workshop and craftspeople. Once I was finished with my business in the castle, I returned to the temple. God dang, I'm tired. The apprentices had training today, so only Daniel and Angelica were accompanying me as guards. Feline looked pale, since scholars of the Archducal family would start training with the Knights Order 3 days from now. A single shout from Bonifacius was apparently enough to wipe her mind and root her to the spot. Oh no. In the event of an actual attack, loud voices are going to be the least of your concerns, I said. Freezing in place will put your life at risk. Please do train to be able to escape from danger. As we talked, I started writing a letter detailing the various decisions we had made in the castle. Hartmut read it and then gave me a curious look. You give commoners more details than I would expect, Lady Rosamond. Of course, but by conveying the desires of the nobility in simple terms, we made it easier for the commoners to understand them. They will answer our demands more promptly the more information they have. I gave Hartmut the finished letter and asked him to create 2 more copies. We needed one for the Guildmaster, one for the Gilberta Company, and one for the Dying Guild. As he started copying them out, and while Feline returned to transcribing the book from Dunkelfelger, I looked over Frida's response letter. Her writing was well composed, indicating that she had experience writing for a noble audience, and the elegance with which each word was written made it more than apparent she had undergone a lot of calligraphy training. It was a fairly thick letter listing each guest, their store, and the products they dealt in. There was even more detailed information regarding who had introduced the most of the customers, who visited the restaurant most often, and what their recent profits were. Frida had scheduled the day of our visit for 3 days from now, and she concluded the letter by saying whether there were any foods that Ferdinand and I especially liked or disliked. Freya and Sam, do you know of any foods the High Priest would rather not eat? Also, if you know of any foods he particularly enjoys, please do tell. I do not believe there is anything he dislikes enough to outright refuse. He will eat anything served to him, Fran replied. I believe he liked the soup served in the Italian restaurant the most, Sam added. Yeah, he did. You could tell because the way he just freaking described it. Oh my god. He has said that his own personal chefs are as yet incapable of providing the flavor he desires, that Hugo so masterfully accomplished. I noted down everything they had learned through their attendance information network and fell into thought, wondering whether to include a recipe in my response to Frida. I answered the question she had asked, wrote an explanation on how to make panna cotta, and then included some of the gelatin we had made when creating our hide glue. If she leaps on the recipe, I'll sell her the production method for gelatin and have the Offmer Company start making it from now on. Zom, instruct Gil to deliver this to the Offmer Company. Once that is done, inform the High Priest of the date of our visit. Understood. After sending Zom off, I needed to discuss preparations for the excursion with Fran. Since I'm going to the Italian restaurant, is it settled that Daniel and Angelica will serve as my guard knights, I asked. What about my attendants? I hesitate to bring those from the castle with me to the lower city. Your temple attendants will accompany you, myself included. We have been there before, and therefore know what we need to bring. I nodded in response. It seemed that I was safe, leaving everything to him. The day of our visit eventually came. Frida had sent 2 carriages to the temple, such that we could arrive at the store around the 4th bell. One was noticeably old, while the other was the newest model available. My Great Priest attendants climbed into the old carriage with dishes and various other implements they would need when serving us. Rosina was accompanying them since she was going to be playing for us. Only after they had departed did I climb into the shiny new carriage with Angelica, Ferdinand, and Justice. Daniel and Eckert were going to be guarding us outside the carriage. Why is Justice here, I asked. Did you not say we are using our temple attendants as our servants? I am here as a guard, Lady Rosamond. Really? Did you take all the freaking courses too, dude? Seriously? Even after returning to noble society, Ferdinand apparently hadn't really taken on any new personnel. There were no guard knights who wanted to go to the lower city, so Justice was accompanying us this time just to round out the head count. Justice, the fact that you did not contact the guard knights because you wanted to come yourself is a separate issue from whether they would have wanted to visit the lower city, Ferdinand said. I was simply being considerate since I already knew what their response would be. I need to make good use of this rare opportunity to visit a store in the lower city aimed at the wealthy and locked behind an introductory system. It seemed that not even Justice could find an easy way to enter the restaurant. As an archnoble, he could not visit the lower city without an excuse, and although he could circumvent this with a disguise, he would then lack the authority to request an invitation from a rich merchant. You know, for the introductions-only system to have shut even Justice out so thoroughly, it must be a lot more impressive than I assumed. Dang. My thoughts were interrupted as the carriage started to move. Ferdinand furrowed his brow slightly as he examined the interior. Am I mistaken, or is the carriage bouncing much less than last time? He asked. Oh, yes, I had Zach of the Gutenbergs design a new carriage based on the technology I described to him. He truly is incredible, I boasted, and it seems the Guildmaster wasted no time in implementing them. Ferdinand gave an exceptionally conflicted frown. I had thought the Gutenbergs were concerned only with printing. Do you mean to tell me they are now designing carriages too? Well, Zach is a smith. His work encompasses more than just the printing industry. He is also the one who makes the pumps. You were there when we attached to the temple wall, were you not? Ah, that smith was Zach, Ferdinand murmured. I had thought the Gutenbergs were busy expanding the printing industry. But if they have the time to produce designs such as this, they truly must be waiting for work. No, they're not, I protested. But unless they take on work that involves the lower city, their other patrons will abandon them. I see commoner craftsmen have troubles of their own. Upon passing through the temple gate, we would usually be hit with the vile stench of the lower city, but the Entwickled and the Washed-In had changed everything. The roads in the lower floors of the city's buildings were as white and sparkly as those in the nobles' quarter. The wooden upper levels were still there, but the Washed-In had pretty much transformed the city. Amazing, isn't it? I said. We certainly need not fear the reproach of outsider merchants now, Ferdinand remarked, looking around the lower city with a satisfied expression. I had worried that the commoners would undo all of our efforts in no time at all. But it seemed they were doing a fine job of keeping things clean. This must be because of how hard Dad and the others have been working. That said, the lower city felt so different from what I remembered that I struggled to relax. I found myself glancing all around, taking in all the new sights until we eventually arrived at the Italian restaurant. A store employee opened the door for us to reveal 20-plus large store owners kneeling side by side in the entrance hall. Gustav spoke the lengthy greetings used for nobles, then we were taken to the dining hall. Several square tables were lined up in preparation for a large group to eat together. Ferdinand and I were due to be seated in the chairs furthest from the door. Fran and the others were standing nearby, having arrived earlier than us, and Rosina was already playing the harpspiel. This way, Lady Rosemine. Frida guarded Ferdinand and me to our seats as the soft music continued to play. Daniel and Justice guarded the doors, while Eckert and Angelica followed behind Ferdinand and me respectfully. I was able to identify my seat at a glance since it had one of the cushions I often used in the temple on it. Fran graciously helped me up. Empty plates were already laid out on the table. Ferdinand and I were next to each other at the narrow end of the long rectangle, and sitting nearby was Gustav, Benno, and Otto, and several other familiar faces. Also at the table were the store owners who often gave the Italian restaurant their patronage, and the store owners who regularly worked with Benno and the others. The less familiar I was with them, the further away they were seated. Thank goodness. I'd much rather be seated near people I know than people I don't. I glanced over at Benno and Otto with a smile before looking across all those gathered. I thank you ever so much for coming here today. Frida, the manager, has told me how frequently you all patronize this restaurant. I started naming and thanking the store owners who visited often to indicate that I was similarly invested in the restaurant. They widened their eyes in surprise, having never expected to be thanked so personally, and then they gave proud smiles. Being recognized by the Archduke's adopted daughter meant they could tell others they were a step closer to earning my favor. I have asked you all to gather today because I have a request for the major store owners who collectively represent Airfest, I continued. It was hard to see those seated further away from me, but I could tell that their attention was directed at me. Our duchy is facing a time of great change. I went on to explain that Airfest trends were spreading in the Royal Academy, and that while the number of merchants visiting from other duchies was limited now, there would soon be a great deal more coming to the lower city. Airfest hopes to use this opportunity to strengthen our influence with other duchies, I said. To that end, we need your assistance without fail. I explained that the citywide magic had been used in preparation of welcoming the outsider merchants, and that it was up to the commoners to maintain the cleanliness of the lower city. I glanced over at Ferdinand, and he gave a small nod, signaling for me to continue. However, preserving this beauty is not enough. The city of Airfest has never welcomed so many merchants into its walls at once, so there will surely be chaos when they arrive. Gustav has already identified that there will not be enough accommodations of a high enough standard. Everyone nodded in response. There may be 1 or 2 more inns established by next year, but they will not be ready in time for the merchants' arrival, one store owner said. That is why we are asking for your help. We need you to learn as much as you can about the cities of other duchies so that you may better accommodate our guests. If you require the assistance of nobles, I will do what I can to help. I will also use any information in the Merchants Guild receives to make more informed decisions. There were quite a few store owners blinking at me in surprise, since nobles generally made no attempt to cooperate with commoners. I needed to ensure that they were motivated, else our business with other duchies will suffer. And if our business suffers, everyone would suffer. The Archduke, the nobles, and the commoners. Furthermore, it has been decided that two brides from Ahrensbach will be joining us at the end of summer. I imagine much work will need to be done to accommodate them as well. They would require new furniture, we would need more food to hold a welcoming feast, and there would be more people purchasing new clothes and ornaments. The marriages of nobles have always affected the economy, but the impact was going to be especially large this time around, what with everyone being so busy. There are plans for a competitive event to be held at the start of autumn, I continued. It is being overseen by the Gilberta Company and the Dyeing Guild, but many nobles are also involved, including the Archduchess and various archnobles. I intend to give one participant my exclusive business and award them with a new title related to fashion, in a similar vein to the Gutenbergs. I asked the assistance of any store owners who do business in fashion. The atmosphere of the room changed in an instant. A new title, some asked in slightly raised voices. Autumn contrast remained perfectly calm. Having sensed that my speech was over, Frida approached me and asked whether I would like to begin the meal. Ferdinand nodded in response, so a number of employees came in and started serving drinks. Ferdinand poured me a cup of somewhat sweet-smelling juice. My plate was decorated with appetizers, a faux Capri salad made with pomade, cheese, and herbs, and a cooked vegetable dish made with what looked like to be broccoli and cauliflower. According to Frida, the vegetables had been cooked in consomme before being thoroughly grilled, so they were pleasantly infused with the thick flavor of the soup. Once everyone had their food and drinks, Ferdinand stood up. O mighty King and Queen of the endless skies, who doth grace us with thousands upon thousands of lives to consume, Almighty Eternal Five, who rule the mortal realm, I offer thanks and prayers to thee, and do take part in the meal so graciously provided. Okay, let's see. How long have I been recording? 21 minutes. Evolved cooking. I decided to start with the caprese. I was pretty certain I had taught Hugo to cut the pomade and cheese into slices for this dish, but here the pomades had instead been cut into halves, hollowed out, and then stuffed with creamy cheese seasoned with herbs. This is kind of hard to eat. It all falls apart the moment I cut into it with my knife. I sliced into the caprese, then taking extra care not to make a complete mess, and then tried a large mouthful. The slightly salty cheese brought out the sweetness of the pomade, complemented by the gentle taste of the herbs. Wow, it's so good. It's just that if you could change the way it's prepared a little bit, like presentation-wise, it'd be a little better. My eyes widened. The mouthful was considerably better than that of a caprese made with slices. I could practically feel the chef's cooking spirit, driving them to make improvement after improvement in hopes of creating the tastiest meal possible. Ferdinand narrowed his eyes in slight curiosity as he tried his own caprese. This seems to taste better than what is served in the temple, he commented. An improvement here born from how dedicated the chefs are in bettering their dishes, no doubt. The same ingredients can taste quite different when the mouthfeel and such are given such careful consideration. It seems that cooking progressed steadily while I was asleep. We certainly won't need to fear judgment from the merchants of the duchies. I tried the broccoli and cauliflower next. It was scorched and crunchy on the outside, but the inside was soft and well cooked. The sensation of biting into something cooked and having the taste of soup spread through my mouth was to die for. I wonder whether Ferdinand likes it too. He is quite fond of consomme. Ooh! I glanced at Ferdinand. He was largely expressionless, but I could see that his eyes were lowered and a very subtle smile was playing on his lips. He was enjoying the taste to its fullest. This cooking style could be used on other vegetables as well, I said. It feels entirely like eating soup in the shape of vegetables. It was my house chef who devised this dish, Gustav noted. I immediately recalled Lace, who burned with the desire to improve her recipes and considered Hugo her rival. Is Lace experimenting with the food served in the Italian restaurant, I asked. I'm surprised that this is better than it was 2 years ago. She has been doubling her efforts ever since losing to your personal chef, Lady Rosemine. I had her work the kitchen for this special occasion. She was extremely eager for you to try her new dishes. Oh, she lost to Hugo! Nice! So at least he got a win. Gustav glanced toward the kitchen. Lace was apparently working hard for my sake. Even when I wasn't handing out recipes, she, Hugo, Ella, and Nicola were coming up with one new dish after another through trial and error. Nothing could make me happier, since I wanted to spread as many tasty foods as possible. Lace always makes new recipes her own. I am quite fond of her experimental spirit, I said. I have been told that you gifted us a new ingredient in a recipe several days ago. Lace was unfortunately unable to master them in time for today's dessert. The texture is quite unique, and although it tastes excellent, she was not completely satisfied with her work, Gustav said. Lace had apparently experimented with the panne cotta, but she hadn't been able to make anything of a good enough standard for her to feel comfortable serving today. Lady Rosemine, what was that a new ingredient? Gustav asked. Lace mentioned she would like more, but she could not identify what it was. It was gelatin made by cutting away the clearest parts during the glue-making process, simmering them like consomme, removing any scum and scrape, and then draining the resulting mixture. It was sure to expand the range of sweets and meals one could make. I intend to sell the production method to Frida at a later date, I replied, which made all the store owners look up at once. Gustav was completely taken aback, while Benno, who was sitting beside him, shot me a sharp look. His dark red eyes narrowed slightly as he leaned forward to speak. You intend to sell the production method to Frida, he repeated, as if to make sure he had heard me correctly. Oh, he don't like that. Well, dude, you can't have everything. You can't have all the production methods and everything. You got to let that spread around. You're doing printing, not food. Wait, what am I saying? He's doing this with the Italian restaurant, but still. Frida protected the Italian restaurant during the 2 years I was asleep, and she has facilitated the advancement of cooking in the meantime, as we can see. I will teach her the production method as a reward, after she pays me an appropriate fee, of course. Besides, there's no point in me selling anything cooking related to you, Benno, is there? The planting company already had their hands full with their own work. They were so busy, in fact, that they were having to go on frequent trips to other provinces to spread the printing and papermaking industries. I had heard they had so little manpower to spare for the Italian restaurant that they had entrusted everything to Frida. I was a co-investor in the Italian restaurant, and since my name alone served as marketing to draw in customers, I received a reasonable portion of its profits. That said, I hadn't done anything since offering the initial investment and providing some recipes. It seemed more efficient for me to just give any new recipes to Frida. Not to mention, the Offmer Company prepared a lot of pound cakes for the introductory tournament, which must have been pretty rough on them. This has to be okay. The planting company has nothing to fear. I understand that it is unwise to offer production methods at a lower price, so the fee I request will be more than reasonable, I said, puffing out my chest. Benno's lips curved into a slight frown to show how little he was amused. I could only assume there was something else bothering him, aside from his worries that I might charge too low an amount. But as I tilted my head in confusion, Ferdinand softly called my name. Rosemine, rewarding those who protected the Italian restaurant and aided in the development of cooking techniques is an understandable, if not entirely normal, response. It is also understandable to reward the Gilberta Company for successfully completing an order for royalty. And have you also rewarded the planting company for dedicating themselves to spreading the printing industry? No. Dude, you gotta get on that! They were working hard to accelerate the process simply because I wanted things done faster, but when it came to rewards, the Gilberta Company had received nothing more than my new dyeing techniques. There wasn't something they could earn much of a profit from since I was selling them at a rather low price. But hosting the dyeing competition would secure the Gilberta Company some important noble exposure while also increasing its influence. However, although I had praised them for their efforts, I hadn't given the planting company or the Gutenbergs any rewards of particular note. Ooh, you gotta get on that, girl. I suppose I do have other product ideas I could sell to them if they were willing to suffer the consequences. I looked over at Benno and Mark with a hand on my cheek. There are various kinds of stationery that I am interested in having made, and if the planting company so wishes, I wouldn't particularly mind selling the rights to them and their production methods. I must warn you, though, doing this will require the planting company and the Gutenbergs to take on even more than they have already. Are you sure this is what you want? Benno faltered for a moment, and Mark averted his eyes, but an instant later, Benno responded with a nod, now wearing the calculating smile of a merchant. We will gratefully accept any product ideas you have, he said. I could tell from the look on his face and his dark red eyes that he wanted the rights to anything printing or paper related, no matter how busy he became as a result. That was fine by me, but the trip to Groschel came first. Then we may speak of this another time, I said, once things have settled down a bit. Your consideration honors us, Benno replied. Just as I thought everything was settled, Ferdinand shot me a deliberate look, the corners of his lips curving up into a grin. So now you have rewarded all those who devoted themselves to labor during the 2 years you were asleep. The planting company, the Gilberta Company, and the Offmer Company. So, in other words, give me something too. Sure, I got you. She can read him like a book now. Literally. She knows how hard he worked during the whole time she was asleep those 2 years. How much he did for her. She knows he needs a reward. Ferdinand hadn't just helped me while I was asleep either. He was taking good care of me even now that I was awake again. I was more than happy to reward him with something so long as he was direct about it, but his normal bored expression made it impossible to tell whether he cared about this at all. As you have also greatly assisted me, Lord Ferdinand, I am more than willing to give you what you desire. Is there something that I have that you want, I ask? Ooh, the recipes! The recipes made by your chefs. Even more have accumulated over time, correct? It was hard to imagine that a few recipes were enough of a reward, especially considering how much he had done for me by helping me gather potion ingredients and make Schwartz and Weiss's outfits. But I wasn't about to question what he wanted. If recipes were enough for him, then recipes he would receive. Maybe he'll tell you something later, not in front of everybody else what he wants as well, because, recipes don't seem like enough. Very well, I shall offer you Hugo's recipes. I plan to compile and sell them as a recipe book, however, so please do keep them a secret. Naturally. More soup was brought over for Ferdinand, who was pleased at having acquired what he wanted. Frida had even come over with a sheet of paper to explain the dish to him and me. She sure has grown up. She had always been seated too far away or standing beside Thule, who had very good proportions, so the realization hadn't completely passed me by. Now that I could see her up close, however, I could tell that she had grown up a bit. The devouring meant she had been fairly small when I first met her, but now she was as big as any other girl her age. Hopefully I'll grow up too soon. I let out a sigh, comparing my hand to Frida's as she began to explain the menu. Today's soup is a double consommé. It seemed that Ferdinand was somewhat dissatisfied with the consommé served in the temple, since although the temple chefs were good, they were not quite as good as Hugo, Fran, and Zom had passed that information on to me, which I had then passed on to Frida, so she had prepared one of his favorite dishes, double consommé. I am told that you enjoyed Hugo's consommé, Lord Ferdinand. Our chef was so eagerly wished to outshine Hugo, so she had made the most carefully prepared consommé of our time. Please do enjoy. Lace had apparently put her all into making the amber soup before us, determined not to be beaten by Hugo. The taste practically carried on the steam that wafted into the air, such that the aroma alone was enough to make one's stomach grumble. It was pure enough that the bottom of the bowl was clearly visible through the liquid, and the thick color showed it had been made with the utmost care. Oh, dear Lord, again with this? Why did you have to ask him that? I'm sorry. I kind of read ahead slightly. I brought a spoonful of consommé to my lips. The concentrated flavors of various vegetables and meat flowed through my mouth like a river of ambrosia. Why did she have to ask him this? Is the soup beautiful? Fuck. Why would you describe something like that? Lord Ferdinand, I asked. No, dude. Yes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder and all that, but do you really think soup is beautiful? Oh my god. Yes, it is a picture of beauty, Ferdinand replied. He was wearing a soft smile that seemed to come from the heart, an especially rare sight indeed. The flavors are more complex than those of the consommé I recognize, but they are simultaneously more unified. The creation process is similar to brewing in that one changes not only the quality of the ingredients, but the brewing process itself. Not just the ingredients have changed, but also something fundamental about the recipe itself. I didn't understand a word of what you just said, Ferdinand. Wow. Ferdinand's weird. What am I saying? They're all weird. They're all weird in their own ways. He was being more verbose than usual, expounding how challenging it was to rethink a process from the ground up, and how beautiful of a success their efforts had produced. I couldn't follow in the least. Oh well, he seems to like it, so whatever. Ferdinand enjoying the beauty of the consommé was good enough for me, but Frida was looking at him in surprise as though she hadn't at all expected such a response. I am surprised. You are entirely correct, Lord Ferdinand. Egg whites diminished the flavor somewhat, so our chef poured much time and effort into developing an alternative way to strain the scum. I personally did not notice how this changed the taste, but I suppose those who understand. The chef will surely be delighted to hear this. It's impressive that Ferdinand can notice such a minor difference. But it's even more impressive that Lace achieved something like this in the first place. A sigh of admiration escaped me, but then I realized, if Ferdinand had such a sensitive tongue, how in the world did he manage to make potions that taste so ungodly awful? Surely a single drop of that stuff would kill him. I don't know! Dude, that's kind of weird. Anybody have any input on that? Hang on, let me make sure this is still recording. Okay, good. I thought I hit a button on my stupid keyboard. This is the carbonara. The consommé was followed up with carbonara. The rich sauce had been made with egg yolks and thick cream and was decorated with crispy bacon. I twirled some of the spaghetti on my fork and watched excess sauce begin to flow down. Upon taking my first bite, Taking care not to drip any sauce, the first thing I noticed was the strong taste and sticky texture of the cheese. This is better than Hugo's too! Lace had probably used some consomme as well. It wasn't what would be considered carbonara back home, but it was a solid step better than the recipe I had taught them. Rosamund, this is quite unlike what you taught my chefs, is it not? Ferdinand asked, fixing me with a stern glance after trying some himself. He could glare all he wanted, but I wasn't getting to eat this stuff either. This is the result of the chefs striving for greater heights in the 2 years I was asleep, I said. It is clear that the great strides have been made since I had shared the recipes. Not even I was expecting this much progress. Oh, I find myself wanting the chef, Ferdinand muttered. The look in his light golden eyes were so serious that I recoiled despite myself. Frida and the Gustav did the same before glancing at me fearfully, afraid that Lace might be taken from them. Their silent pleas for me to intervene came through loud and clear. Ferdinand! You ain't getting Lace! Your cries have been heard, citizens. I shall save the day and stop Ferdinand. Somehow. I responded with a reassuring nod. Meanwhile, I could feel Benno and Otto looking on in amusement like they were watching an entertaining show of some kind. They had no intention of helping whatsoever. I mean, if he wants the food to be that good, why doesn't he have Lace come and have his chefs come from the temple and have Lace train them on how to make that? Like that. Maybe. Because I don't think she would want to go to the temple. So why not have your chefs go and cook with them? Ferdinand, I trust that you would not use your wealth and authority to steal away their chef, I said. Lace is essential for the continued success of the Italian restaurant. I am aware, but the thought that commoners are the ones who get to enjoy these dishes is deeply concerning, Ferdinand replied. These enhanced recipes were the fruits of Lace's labor, but he would naturally feel conflicted about commoners having such easy access to better food than nobles. This is also buco, Ferreira said, as a new dish was brought out. It was made by thoroughly cooking the thighs of a calf on the bone in pommes sauce, and Dunkelfelder made wine. Or made whatever. The glistening brown veal was covered in pommes sauce, which also glistened thanks to the juices of the meat. This dish apparently used a type of wine made in Dunkelfelder that only rarely made its way to Ehrenfest. I had taught Hugo recipes using locally produced wine, but it seemed that Lace had used Gustav's connections to search out the absolute best product for the job. The Offma company is also pretty impressive, spending this much money on Lace's experiments. It was because they knew the experimentation would pay for itself with increased sales, but even so, the cost must have been exorbitant. I concluded that it was best for Lace to keep cooking as she liked under Gustav's patronage. Besides, if they were willing to let Lace go, I'd smash her up before Ferdinand even had the chance. Ha 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 ha! Ferdinand, if she was able to get her, Rosamund would snatch her up in an instant. And Ferdinand, you'd be pissed at it. I paused my thoughts till cut into the ossobuco. My knife sliced right through, and the veal practically fell off the bone. It was rare to see such tender, well-cooked meat here. Ooh! With hope swelling in my heart, I cut up a large chunk of veal, thoroughly soaked it in pommes sauce, and then brought it to my mouth. This particular pommes sauce seemed to have been made with a variety of chopped up vegetables, as it tasted sweeter and more complex than what I was used to. I wiggled in place, reveling in the sensation of the tender meat melting on my tongue, only to notice that Ferdinand was now looking at the food with calculating rather than admiring eyes. It seemed that he was starting to quite seriously plot how to take Lace away. No, you are not getting Lace, Ferdinand. Ferdinand, my chefs may not be as dedicated to improving their art as Lace, but they have likewise spent the last 2 years devising new recipes of their own. Your own chefs have not produced any such new recipes, have they? Now that you mention it, I suppose no new dishes of note have been served, Ferdinand replied, raising an eyebrow as if to ask what I was getting at. I shrugged and took another bite of the meat of the ossobuco. That would be your fault, Ferdinand. Explain. Chefs are motivated to improve when you give feedback on their changes, telling them which meal was better, which flavors you preferred, what ingredients you wish for them to use, and so on. Impressions and requests make all the difference. It is due to your apparent lack of interest, your tendency to order the same thing over and over again, that your own chefs have not been able to grow. Ferdinand ordered his favorite consomme on a heavy rotation and carefully checked to make sure it tasted the same each time. As a result, his chefs had no time to focus on improving their skills. Instead, they atrophied from following the exact same recipe of practice perfection. See, it seems that I need to train not only blueprints, but chefs as well. Your own personal chefs should specialize in catering to your preferred tastes. Even if you were to take Lace to the temple, it's hard to say whether she would maintain the passion for experimenting she has now, I said to Ferdinand, taking another bite of osobuco, while desperately apologizing to his chefs on the inside. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, he's probably going to work you to the bone now. Yeah, he probably would. You know, how Ferdinand is and how he trains people, oh, he will. As Ferdinand made the decision to train his own chefs rather than stealing away one that someone else had spent so much time and money on, it came time for dessert. Today we were having Brotherhood shortcake. It seemed that Lace basically never overcooked or burned sponge cake anymore. Dang it. Wait, I accidentally hit the button. It was soft and tender, covered in pure white cream, topped with thin layers of Brotherhood that has been soaked in wine and arranged in the shape of a flower. I may want to make various piping tips for the pastry bags. The fruit decoration was rather fancy, but the cakes were still somewhat plain compared to the ones I was used to back on Earth. For me, they could have done something more extravagant with the cream. The thought made me realize I had seen round tips being used to pipe ingredients and such, but not once had I seen any that were fancier shapes. Perhaps I should ask Hugo, and if they don't already exist, I could ask Johann, I muttered to myself as I took a bite of the cream-colored cake. Of course, Benno overheard me with his bionic hearing and shot me a weary look. Dude, you can hear. Lady Rosamund, do you have immediate plans to make something, he asked. Johann is presently quite occupied making pumps to attach to as many wells as possible before the merchants from other duchies arrive. He was chastising me for thinking about letting more work onto them during such a busy time, and understandably so. Pumps were more important than piping tips for pastry bags. It doesn't have to be Johann, Zach or Danilo can make it instead. I will send the schematics at a later date. Now that you mention it, however, we certainly are lacking in available smiths, aren't we? It may be wise to recruit a few more into the Gutenbergs. The other store owners all pricked their ears up at once, directing their focus my way. Upon seeing this, Benno slowly shook his head. I believe it would be best to save such a matter until after the event with the Dying Guild, he said. Are you not quite busy at the moment, Lady Rosamund? Despite his polite words, his furiously blazing eyes made his true message clear. Stop rampaging around! I considered my schedule and nodded. I certainly didn't have the time to spare on this kind of endeavor. I suppose we lack the time to leisurely select a new smith. I shall trust the Gutenbergs to produce a steady stream of apprentices, I said. And with that, the meetings at the Italian restaurant came to an end. Here are the chefs who provided today's meals, Frida said as we were leaving. There was a row of chefs lined up at the entrance hall, and among them was Lace, wearing the smile of a job well done. Our eyes met, and I returned the smile. Thank you for the meal, I said. Lord Ferdinand and I were both quite satisfied. We have no qualms about trusting this establishment to serve the merchants who will be visiting the city. I commend the advances you have made during my 2-year absence. Lace shut her eyes tightly for a moment. She clenched a trembling fist, exhaled slowly, and then gave a proud smile. Thank you. We await your future patronage. Oh boy. That's gonna have to wait, and I will see you all in the next one.